There's only room for four. My sister smirked as the host guided me away from the table. So my son and I were left standing. 10 minutes later, I was chatting with the manager. And when the $3,000 bill arrived, her smirk vanished instantly. If I had to sum up my relationship with my sister in one sentence, it would be this. She's the kind of person who will smile at you sweetly, then pull the chair out from under you just to watch you fall and somehow convince everyone it was your fault for not sitting properly. My name's Kyle. I'm 38 and I've never been the confrontational type. I'm the classic let it slide guy. The one who picks his battles so carefully people forget I've got any fight in me at all. But I remember every dig, every backhanded comment, every time I was told to stop overreacting when I knew deep down I wasn't. My sister Lauren is 41. A picture-perfect suburban mom with a white smile matching Christmas pajamas and a social media presence so carefully curated you'd think her life was one long Pottery Barn commercial. But behind all that, she's sharp, strategic, and honestly kind of a jerk when she thinks no one's watching. The thing is, family gatherings always bring out the worst in her. Or maybe it just brings out the real her. Growing up, she was the golden child. Straight A student head cheerleader prom queen. You get the idea. I was the quiet younger brother who liked art, didn't care much for sports, and preferred reading to shouting over who got the front seat. Our parents never said it out loud. But the favoritism was baked into everything. When Lauren got into a minor car accident, she was stressed from school. When I scraped someone's bumper in college, I was careless and irresponsible. Her mistakes were forgivable. Mine were character flaws. I didn't realize how deep those patterns ran until after Dad passed away. He was the glue rough around the edges, but he kept the peace. Once he was gone, it was like the thin sheet covering the rot just got ripped off. Suddenly, every dinner was a power play. Every invitation came with conditions, and every time I thought we were finally getting along, she'd do something small and petty to remind me where I stood. But I dealt with it. I always dealt with it. Especially for my son, Ben. Ben's 12 now, and he's everything to me. Smart, funny kind. His mom and I divorced 5 years ago, amicably, thankfully, and I've had full custody since she moved abroad for work. I never thought being a single dad would come naturally, but it does. Or maybe it's just that he makes it easy to try. He's the kind of kid who will hold the door for strangers, say please without needing a reminder, and write thank you cards after birthday parties without me nagging. I don't know how I got lucky, but I did. Anyway, a few months back, Lauren invited us to celebrate her twin's birthday at a nice place downtown. Her words, "Nothing too fancy," she texted, "but wear something decent. They've got a dress code." That should have been my first clue. Lauren doesn't do nothing too fancy. I knew she picked that restaurant to impress her friends, probably even to show off a little, but it was for the twins and Ben liked hanging out with his cousins, so I said yes. I even went out and bought him a new button-down and myself a proper dress shirt because the last thing I wanted was to show up and be silently judged. The day of the dinner traffic was brutal. We were only 5 minutes late, but I still apologized as we walked in. The hostess gave me a polite smile and gestured toward the private dining section. It was all glass-walled and dimly lit with elegant hanging lights and waiters and actual tuxedo vests. Ben's eyes widened. "This place is awesome," he whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "Can I order steak?" "Whatever you want, bud." I grinned. We followed the hostess down the hall, and I spotted the group right away. Lauren and her husband, Paul, were already seated at a long table with their twins and another couple I didn't recognize. For kids for adults, 8 seats total, except only 4 were actually occupied. The rest had neatly folded napkins, menus, and little place cards with names. I slowed, slightly confused. My name wasn't on any of the cards. Before I could say anything, Lauren glanced up and smiled with that faux surprised look she's mastered over the years. "Oh, Kyle," she said like she hadn't seen me walk in. "I thought I told you we only reserved for 8. I blinked. I didn't know I needed to RSVP. "You said to come." I did say that. She agreed, voice sugar W sweet. But we had to finalize the guest list for the private room. It's limited seating and with the twins' friends and their parents. She gestured vaguely toward the table. "There's only room for 4. I looked around. No staff bringing extra chairs. No one making space, just 8 seats prearranged, like a wedding rehearsal dinner. Ben stood awkwardly beside me, glancing up with that polite, anxious smile kids get when they know something's off, but don't want to make a scene. Paul leaned back in his chair and sipped from a wine glass. "You really should have called ahead, man." I felt heat rise in my face, but I swallowed it down. "Got it," I said quietly. I could have argued, could have called them out right there, but I didn't. Something in the air told me this wasn't just a miscommunication. It was intentional, a message. I smiled tightly, put a hand on Ben's shoulder and steered him toward the other side of the restaurant. The hostess, bless her heart, noticed us wandering and asked if we needed help. I gave her a brief rundown and asked as casually as I could if there was any open seating available, something private if possible. She hesitated for a second, then smiled and said, "Let me check with the manager." And that's how I met Steve. Steve, the restaurant manager, was maybe in his late 50s. Silver hair, sharp suit, and the kind of presence that makes you instantly feel like you're talking to the person in charge. I explained what happened without bitterness, just facts, and his eyebrows furrowed. "They didn't reserve spots for you and your son, even though you were invited." "Apparently there's only room for 4, I said, throwing up air quotes. Steve gave me a long look, then nodded once. "Give me 5 minutes." 10 minutes later, Ben and I were seated at a stunning booth on the opposite side of the restaurant, plush leather seating, fireplace view, and a waiter who introduced himself like we were royalty. I wasn't sure what Steve did behind the scenes, but it was clear we were being taken care of. I kept my cool. I didn't go back to Lauren's table. Didn't make a scene, but I could see her across the glass divider. Every time she looked up and saw me smiling, chatting with Steve, or laughing with Ben, her face tightened just a little more. And then came the moment that shifted everything. The waiter returned and said, "Mr. Kyle, the manager wanted you to know everything has been arranged as discussed." Then looked up at me confused. "What did you arrange?" I just smiled because that was the moment I decided this wouldn't end the way Lauren expected. This wouldn't be another story where Kyle quietly takes the hit, makes excuses, and shrinks into the background. No, this time I had a plan, and by the time dessert arrived, it would all come together. Ben was sipping his lemonade through one of those fancy metal straws when I saw Lauren lean over and whisper something to Paul. He looked in our direction, then snorted into his wine. One of the twins, Noah, I think, craned his neck to look over at us too, before getting gently redirected by his mom. The whole thing played out like a pantomime, subtle enough for plausible deniability, but pointed enough that it was clearly meant to sting. I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled and gave a little wave across the room like we were old friends catching up from afar. Steve, the manager, happened to walk by again and noticed. "Everything's still good here?" he asked, glancing toward the other table with a flicker of curiosity. "Perfect," I said. "Better than expected, honestly." Ben grinned. "Dad, can I get the steak and mac and cheese?" "Go for it." I nodded. "We're celebrating." He tilted his head. "What are we celebrating?" I just smiled at him, that we're not sitting over there. It would have been easier to brush the whole thing off, chalk it up to Lauren being Lauren, and let it slide like I always had, but something had shifted. Maybe it was how Ben looked at me, uncertain and trying to be strong. Or maybe it was how comfortable Lawrence seemed throwing her weight around and humiliating me in front of my kid. She always knew how to walk that razor-thin line. Just petty enough to make you second-guess your own anger. Just subtle enough that blowing up would make you look like the problem. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This time she didn't just nudge the chair out from under me. She pulled it out from under my son too. And I wasn't going to let that slide. Dinner was delicious. I let Ben order whatever he wanted. The waiter, Michael, kept our drinks full and our plates warm. Halfway through our meal, Steve swung by again and told me that if we wanted dessert, he had something special in mind. I told him we'd love that. I could see Lauren's table from the reflection in the glass behind Ben's seat. Their side was lively, but every few minutes she would glance over, probably wondering what we were talking about, what we were laughing at, what exactly I'd said to the manager. But the breaking point didn't come until the cake. Apparently, Lauren had arranged for a giant shared dessert to be brought out to her table for the twins, a sparkler-topped volcano of fudge and brownies, the kind of thing kids lose their minds over. As the waiter rolled it out, music playing, sparklers fizzing, the kids clapped and screamed. The spectacle pulled the entire restaurant's attention toward her table. Ben turned to watch and smiled. "That looks cool." "It does," I said. Then from across the room, Lauren raised a champagne glass toward us and mouthed, "You missed out." Subtle, polished, and absolutely infuriating. I nodded, not in anger, not in defeat, just acknowledgement. But that's when it hit me. This wasn't just some casual slight. This whole thing had been planned. Lauren had never intended for us to be part of the dinner. The private room, the reserved seating, the spectacle, all of it was curated. It was a statement of flex. She wanted to show her friends that she was the star, that she could ice out her own brother and still look gracious doing it, that she could exclude family without guilt. Because in her world, appearances were everything. And I knew that at some point she'd try to make me look like the ungrateful one. Steve came by again just as they were finishing up their cake. "Everything still to your liking?" he asked. "Couldn't be better," I said. "Hey, do you guys do custom desserts for events?" He raised an eyebrow. "We do. Want me to send over a menu?" I hesitated. Then I leaned in slightly. "Actually, how hard would it be to make a duplicate of that dessert?" I pointed sly toward Lauren's table. "Only bigger." Steve tilted his head. Bigger. Same base, but triple it. Make it theatrical. I'll cover it. He gave me a sly grin. I'll see what I can do. And with that, the stage was set. I thought that was the end of it. The little finale. A quiet flex of my own delivered with a smile and a polite tone. I didn't need to be petty. I didn't need to raise my voice or make a scene. I just wanted Lauren to feel what she made us feel. But then something happened that turned the night on its head. Ben had excused himself to go to the restroom. And I was scrolling through my phone when a shadow passed by our table. I looked up and saw Paul standing there, wine glass in hand, that permanent smirk on his face. Didn't think we'd see you here, he said. I blinked. You mean after you told me there were no seats for us? He laughed like we were sharing a joke. Come on, man. It's not that deep. You know how Lauren gets with party planning? She's got that whole guest list system. It's just numbers, right? I said, not taking the bait. Just numbers. You could have said something, though, he added, tilting his glass. Could have asked for a chair or whatever. Nobody was trying to snub you. I stared at him. You told me I should have called ahead. Paul shrugged. Well, yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to sit with us, you would have made sure, right? I had to bite my tongue. Ben returned to the table, pausing when he saw Paul standing there. Hi, Uncle Paul. Paul gave him a nod. Hey, kiddo. Then he turned back to me and lowered his voice just enough so only I could hear. Look, I know you don't always feel included, but it's not personal. Lauren just doesn't like chaos. You and Ben, you're kind of unpredictable. I blinked. Unpredictable? Not in a bad way. He rushed to clarify. Just, not part of the routine. She works hard to make things nice. Maybe next time just check in before showing up. That word again, check in. Like I was some outsider, a guest, someone who needed permission to be with family. I stood slowly. Thanks for stopping by, Paul. I think our dessert's about to arrive. He gave me a little shrug, then turned and wandered back to their table. As he sat down, Lauren looked over and said something to him. He whispered back and she laughed. And then I felt it, that deep, sharp snap of something finally breaking loose. It wasn't about dinner. It wasn't even about the table. It was about the years of being a fallback, the invisible sibling, the extra seat that only mattered if someone else canceled. I remembered the holidays where our gifts were always last-minute afterthoughts. The birthday where she forgot Ben's name on the card. The time she invited the whole family to her beach house except us and said it was just a logistics thing. I remembered all of it, and for once I wasn't going to swallow it down. The waiter returned wheeling in a cart so large it took 2 staff members to navigate it. On top of it was a 3-tiered dessert monstrosity, molten lava cake brownie towers, ice cream scoops balanced with chocolate shards, caramel drizzle, strawberries dipped in gold flakes, actual gold flakes, and on the top a tiny fondant plaque that read, "To the best dad and the coolest kid." Ben's eyes nearly popped out of his head. The entire restaurant gasped audibly. Phones came out. People started clapping. The waiter lit a line of sparklers around the base, and it looked like something out of a Vegas show. Across the room, Lauren's face froze. Steve reappeared like magic and clapped me on the back. Enjoy, gentlemen. It's on the house. I blinked. Wait, what? He smiled. Your story kind of stuck with me. And honestly, it's nice seeing someone treat their kid right. Consider it a manager's privilege. I was stunned. Ben dug in, giggling. Chocolate smeared across his cheek. Dad, this is awesome. I laughed, overwhelmed but grateful. Yeah, bud, it really is. Lauren didn't come over after that, but she didn't have to. I could see the tension in her jaw, the way she clutched her purse a little tighter, the subtle panic that crept in when she realized she wasn't in control of the room anymore. But the real twist that came when the check arrived. Not mine, hers. Because you see, what Lauren didn't know, what nobody at her table knew, was that the restaurant had a policy for large private dining reservations. A mandatory minimum spend of $3,000 for parties using the private room on a Friday night. And when you don't meet the minimum, they don't cancel the charge. They just charge you anyway. And someone at that table had just ordered sparkling water and salad, but I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to because the manager, he was already walking toward their table, and her face the moment she saw that number on the bill. Let's just say the look she gave me from across the room was worth every single sparkler. When we left the restaurant that night, Ben was still buzzing from the sugar and the attention. He clutched one of the gold-dusted strawberries like it was a trophy, recapping every detail from the dessert spectacle with the kind of breathless excitement only a 12-year-old could manage. I smiled and nodded as he spoke, but my thoughts were somewhere else entirely. The rush of adrenaline from the moment Lauren's frozen face, the manager's quiet solidarity, the quiet power of being seen had started to wear off. And now I felt it. That weird, empty ache in your chest after you finally stand up for yourself. That question you don't want to ask. Did I go too far? I didn't say much on the ride home. Ben dozed off halfway through, still mumbling about the lava mountain cake. But my mind was spinning. Not with guilt exactly, more like exhaustion. Emotional hangover, maybe? The thing is, standing up to Lauren didn't fix anything. It didn't rewrite the past. It didn't change the fact that I was still the afterthought sibling, the one who only mattered when someone needed a spare hand or a quiet favor. That night was a spark, sure, but I could feel it already. It wouldn't change the way the rest of the family saw me. If anything, it might just confirm their quiet suspicions. Kyle's dramatic overreacts makes a scene, and maybe I had overstepped. I didn't regret treating Ben to something special. But the part with the custom dessert, the triple-tiered spectacle, I wondered if it had come off as petty. Was I trying to give my son a memory, or was I trying to get even? That question lingered for weeks. Lauren didn't reach out after the dinner. No text, no call, not even a passive-aggressive group message with a link to birthday photos. I wasn't expecting an apology. She'd never once apologized for anything in her life, but the silence was heavy, intentional. My mom, of course, got involved in the way only she could. I heard things got a little awkward at the restaurant, she said over the phone one afternoon, drawing out the word awkward like it had thorns. Awkward, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She told us there wasn't room. We had to eat separately. Well, she said with that practiced sigh, you have to understand, Lauren puts a lot of effort into these events planning for kids, making sure everything runs smoothly. Maybe you should have communicated better. I closed my eyes. There it is. Mom, I said she invited me. She told me the time and place. She didn't say anything about RSVPs or limited seating. I'm just saying maybe if you'd called ahead. She told me I should have called ahead after we showed up. A pause. Well, maybe she was just stressed. And then I heard about some extravagant dessert. I almost laughed. So now I'm the problem. I didn't say that, she replied, but her tone said exactly that. The conversation ended soon after. No resolution, no support, just more of the same. Tiptoeing around Lauren's feelings, minimizing mine. That was the moment I realized something else. This wasn't rock bottom because of what Lauren did. It was rock bottom because I kept expecting people who never saw me to suddenly understand me. I'd spent most of my life shrinking myself to fit their comfort zones, downplaying wins, laughing off slights, telling myself that's just how she is. But what was I teaching Ben if I kept doing that? I didn't want him to grow up thinking love meant tolerating disrespect or that family meant obligation without boundaries. I wanted him to know his worth, and that meant I had to start showing him mine. So I stopped waiting for validation. I stopped replying to group chats that only existed to celebrate Lauren's milestones. I didn't send gifts for her twins' next event. I didn't explain myself. I didn't defend myself. I just stepped back. And in the quiet that followed, something unexpected happened. I started to breathe again. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't expending energy trying to manage family politics. I wasn't rehearsing comebacks or replaying arguments in my head. I had space. And in that space, I started to focus on something I'd long neglected me. I'd always been creative, drawing, painting, designing. But I'd buried that side for years, working in it to keep things stable for Ben after the divorce. It paid the bills, sure, but it never fulfilled me. One night, after Ben had gone to bed, I pulled out my old sketch pad from the back of the closet and started doodling. It felt awkward at first, like picking up a language you hadn't spoken in years, but muscle memory kicked in. One doodle became a sketch. One sketch became a full-page illustration. And one night I posted a few of them anonymously to a Reddit art thread just to see what people thought. The response blew me away. People liked my work. They really liked it. Comments poured in, questions, compliments, even a couple of commission requests. I hadn't even thought about making money off it. But suddenly it didn't seem so far-fetched. I started putting in 2 hours every night after Ben went to bed. Not grinding, not hustling, just creating. For me, for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. And Ben noticed. "You've been in a better mood lately," he said one morning over breakfast. I blinked. "Really?" "Yeah," he said. "You don't seem tired anymore." I smiled, ruffled his hair. "That's because I've been drawing again." "Cool," he grinned. "Can you teach me?" That moment, that one little comment, it meant more than any apology Lauren could have ever given. From there, things snowballed in the best way. I started an Instagram art page, took on a few small gigs, logos, pet portraits, even a book cover for an indie author. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was something. A side income, a side identity, something I owned. Ben and I started doing art nights every Friday. We'd put on music, grab snacks, and draw together. Sometimes he'd try to copy my style. Other times he'd do wild abstract stuff I'd never think of. I could see the way it gave him confidence, the same way it was giving me back my voice. And with every passing week, the bitterness faded. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need Lauren to hurt. I just needed to heal. But of course, family doesn't let you go quietly. It started with a birthday invitation. Not Ben's, mine. A card arrived in the mail in Lauren's handwriting. We're doing a little joint birthday dinner for Mom and Kyle. Family only, dress nice, RSVP. I stared at it for a long time. No call, no text, no apology, just a neatly written invitation like nothing had happened. And the location, the same restaurant, same private room, same Friday night. I nearly tossed the card in the trash. But something held me back because I knew Lauren. This wasn't an olive branch. It was a reset, an attempt to reestablish control, to rewrite the narrative, to bring me back into the fold on her terms. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't coming back to be quiet. And if Lauren wanted a dinner, she was about to get more than she bargained for. The invitation sat on the corner of my desk for 3 days. Not because I was debating whether or not to go. Deep down, I already knew the answer. I was going, but not as the same version of Kyle they expected. Not the quiet sibling who'd nod along while being sidelined. Not the doormat who smiled through gritted teeth and tried to keep the peace. That Kyle was gone. This wasn't just a birthday dinner. It was a test. Lauren was trying to reassert control. She'd chosen the restaurant. She'd included me this time, but not with warmth. With calculation, like she was saying, see, I can be generous when I want to be, but only if you play along. Except this time, I wasn't showing up to play along. I was showing up to make a statement, and I already knew exactly how to do it. The first thing I did was call Steve, the manager from the restaurant. I didn't expect him to remember me. It had been over a month since the twins' dinner. But the moment I said my name and mentioned the triple-decker dessert, he laughed. How could I forget? He said, "You're the guy who made my pastry chef cry." In a good way, by the way. She said, that was the most fun she's had plating something in years. I smiled. Well, I've got a bit of a situation, and I think you might be the only person who can help. He listened as I explained the invitation, the setup, the way Lauren operated. I kept my tone casual but honest. I didn't want to lie or exaggerate. I just wanted him to understand. He did. Let me guess, Steve said dryly. Private room again, limited seats, everything perfectly orchestrated. Exactly, I said. Let me check the booking. He clicked away in the background. Yep, Friday night, same table reserved for 10. That's what your mom, Lauren, her husband, the twins, you and your son, and probably a +1 or 2. My chest tightened. 10 seats. Just enough to make it feel like a family dinner, but not enough to invite anyone outside the immediate circle. And once again, Lauren had made herself the gatekeeper of inclusion. I want to shake things up, I said. Nothing loud, nothing petty, just something to remind her I'm not playing by her rules anymore. Steve paused. Do you want a separate table again? No, I said. This time, I want a seat at that table. And that was the beginning. Over the next few days, I started putting things in motion. Step 1, bring someone she didn't expect. Now, Lauren had always taken subtle jabs at my social life. At family events, she'd throw out lines like, Kyle's too busy to date, he's got Ben and, well, his doodles. Or she'd say, some people are meant to be parents, some are meant to be single, and some are meant to be both. Passive-aggressive nonsense. She loved playing the game where she hinted I was somehow less adult because I hadn't remarried or paraded someone new around. And normally I didn't care, but this time I had a card to play. A month ago, I'd started talking to someone, Marissa. We met through an online art community. She was a graphic designer based one city over with a wicked sense of humor and a quiet intensity that reminded me a little of myself. We'd only been on 3 dates, but we clicked. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be the center of attention, but she got me. So I called her. This might sound insane, I said. But would you be willing to come to a family dinner with me this Friday? Dinner? She repeated, skeptical. At a restaurant where my sister once exiled me and my son to the sidelines. A pause. Now I'm interested. I totally understand if it's too soon or too weird, but I'll go, she said. Just like that. Step 2, dress the part. I don't mean fancy. Lauren expected fancy. She lived for aesthetics. I wanted something sharper, subtle, confident. I found a tailored navy blazer I hadn't worn in years, paired it with a clean white tee-dark jeans and a pair of boots that didn't scream trying too hard, but still made a statement. Ben wore a new charcoal button-down and chinos. Marissa, of course, looked effortlessly elegant in a deep burgundy dress that made Lauren's pastel wardrobe look like wallpaper. Step 3, control the narrative before she could. See, Lauren always thrived on surprise. She liked people being caught off guard, scrambling to react. That's how she stayed in power, by being the one who set the tempo. So I flipped it. The morning of the dinner, I posted a picture to my Instagram art account. It wasn't flashy, just a photo of Ben and me sketching together at the park, captioned, "1 year ago, I was stuck in a place that drained me. Tonight, I celebrate not just my birthday, but the quiet wins that saved my life and the people who made it worth rebuilding." It blew up more than I expected. A few of my pieces had gone semi-viral over the past month, and I guess people had been waiting for a glimpse behind the curtain. Comments poured in support, encouragement, people cheering me on. Lauren followed me on Instagram. I knew she saw it. She liked the post within an hour, but didn't comment, which in her language was louder than any insult. Step 4, arrive last. She always loved to be the grand entrance. This time I gave her the spotlight. Let her bask in it. I even called Steve ahead of time and asked, "If we arrive a few minutes late, can you make sure there's someone to walk us in personally?" He chuckled. "You got it." And so we did. Ben, Marissa, and I walked in exactly 8 minutes late. A sharply dressed hostess greeted us and led us down the familiar hallway. I could already hear the chatter from the private dining room. Lauren's voice too loud with laughter. Paul chiming in with one of his boring anecdotes. My mom asking questions no one was answering. The door opened and everything stopped. Every head turned. Lauren froze mid-sentence. Her eyes darted between me, Marissa, and Ben. Then she smiled. Too tight, too fast. "Oh, Kyle," she said. "You're here. We were starting to worry. I texted you." "We were on our way," I said smoothly, placing a hand on Marissa's back as we entered. Traffic was a nightmare. She glanced at Marissa, smile faltering. "This is Marissa," I added. "A good friend. She's a designer." Marissa extended her hand politely. "Thanks for having me." Lauren took it, then dropped it just a bit too quickly. "Well, we hadn't planned for plus once." "Good thing the reservation was for 10, I said, glancing at the table. "And it was 10 perfect seats. All occupied except 3 hours. She had no out. We sat between Marissa and me, my mother opposite us looking mildly stunned. Paul raised his glass in a half-hearted toast and said something about the birthday boy finally arriving. Lauren tried to recover. She steered the conversation to neutral topics. She talked about a work trip Paul had taken. She mentioned the twins' latest extracurriculars. She even threw in a passive-aggressive joke. We all thought Kyle was keeping us in suspense. Classic artistic temperament, right? I smiled. I like to make an entrance. Guess it runs in the family. Paul chuckled. My mother looked down at her menu, but the tension was thick. Marissa handled herself like a pro. She asked thoughtful questions. She complimented the twins on their hobbies. She laughed at appropriate moments. She didn't overshare, didn't fawn, didn't try to prove anything. And that unsettled Lauren more than if she brought a spotlight and a marching band because Marissa wasn't trying to win. She was just there, comfortable, confident, and it threw off Lauren's whole act. By the time appetizers arrived, she was spiraling. "You know," she said suddenly, sipping her wine, "Kyle's always been the mysterious one, the artist, the free spirit. We never know what he's working on, do we?" I set down my fork. "Actually, I've been working on a children's book, illustrations and all. Got picked up by a publisher last month." A hush fell over the table. My mom's eyes widened. "Really?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's about a kid who finds strength in being different. Inspired by Ben." Marissa reached over and squeezed my hand gently. "That's amazing," my mom said genuinely. Lauren recovered fast. "Well, isn't that sweet?" she said, smiling too wide. "Kyle always had a vivid imagination. Good thing he's finally putting it to use." Ben, God bless him, piped up right then. He also has over 30 commissions now, and his art was featured in an online magazine. I hadn't told him to say that. I hadn't even known he remembered, but the pride in his voice that did something to me. Lauren blinked. "Well, I guess we've all been busy lately." I smiled. Some of us more than others. And with that, the balance shifted. The table had turned. Not through yelling, not through spectacle, but through presence, through proof. I was no longer the background character in Lauren's perfectly curated family narrative. I was the one rewriting the script. And yet I wasn't done because dessert hadn't come yet, and neither had the real surprise. The clink of forks, murmurs of awkward compliments, and the occasional forced laugh filled the room like white noise. By the time dessert rolled around, Lauren's performative warmth had calcified into something colder. She still wore the polite smile, still tilted her head with interest when someone else spoke, but her eyes kept flicking toward me, watching, calculating, waiting for a misstep she could pounce on. I didn't give her one. I'd said almost nothing since dropping the children's book bomb, not because I didn't have more to say, but because the silence was louder. My absence from the usual family chatter unsettled her. Lauren thrived when she was managing the script, but now I wasn't feeding her lines, I wasn't giving her a foil, I was just sitting calm, present, unbothered, and it was driving her nuts. When the waiter brought out the dessert menu, Lauren perked up. Her chance to reclaim the moment. Should we do a shared dessert again? She asked the table. Like we did at the twins' birthday. My mother nodded politely. Paul gave a non-committal shrug. The twins, half asleep by now, didn't care. Lauren looked to me. What do you think, Kyle? I sipped my coffee and met her gaze. Actually, I already arranged something. She blinked. You did? I spoke with Steve last week. He's got something special lined up. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, just a nudge enough for the room to hush. And then it rolled in. A cart pushed by two servers, flanked by a third holding a tray of sparkling glasses. On the cart was a large layered dessert. Not a carbon copy of the one from the twins' party, but a refined evolution. This one was elegant, sculptural, a tower of white chocolate mousse caramel, drizzled profiter, and dark chocolate shards fanned like wings. Gold-dusted raspberries glistened in the candlelight. On the top tier, a thin slate of tempered chocolate engraved in white script to Kyle for rising quietly but powerfully. Gasps and quiet wow-s escaped the guests. Even Paul leaned in for a better look. Ben's eyes went wide. Marissa grinned. Lauren. She froze. I stood. Thank you, I said to the servers, then turned to the table. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to mark this moment. Lauren found her voice. That's quite a gesture. I smiled. It is. She gave a little laugh. I mean, it's lovely, but don't you think it's a bit much? This was supposed to be a shared dinner, not just your celebration. There it was, the crack, the simmer beneath the surface. I nodded thoughtfully. You're right. But for the past decade, every family dinner has been about someone else. Someone's promotion, someone's kid's recital, someone's curated perfection. And I've always sat quietly congratulating everyone, applauding the show, trying not to take up space. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. This time I wanted to try something different, not out of spite, just to remind myself that I'm allowed to be seen. A pause to remind Ben that being kind doesn't mean being invisible. Lauren's face twitched like she was deciding whether to double down or back off. I didn't give her the chance. Oh, and one more thing, I said, setting down my coffee. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Thick paper formal, I wasn't going to bring this up tonight, but since we're all here, I handed the envelope across the table to my mother. She took it cautiously. What's this, a letter from Dad's lawyer? I said evenly about the trust fund. Lauren palled. What are you talking about? My mom opened the envelope and began reading. Her eyes widened. You see, I continued, voice still calm. Before Dad passed, he set up a trust one for each of us, but the language was a bit particular. The terms were conditional. Lauren was frozen. Dad wasn't oblivious. Mom, he saw how things were going, the dynamics, the favoritism, the silences, and he wanted to correct that. My mother looked up at me, stunned. He left you a controlling interest, I said. In the family cabin, the one Lauren's been renting out as an Airbnb for the past 2 summers. Paul suddenly sat up straighter. Wait, what? I turned to him. Yeah, the deed's been in a trust this whole time. Lauren's name is on the usage lease, but not the ownership. I looked back at my sister, and the clause says that if any beneficiary demonstrates exclusionary behavior toward another, especially involving their child, the trust can be restructured. Lauren's voice cracked. You're bluffing. Check with the lawyer, I said. His number's on the back page. She grabbed the envelope from my mom, scanning the pages like a drowning woman looking for a rope. Paul leaned over her shoulder. Is this real? Lauren didn't answer. I stood again. I don't want the cabin, Lauren. I don't want your parties or your spotlight, but I will protect what's mine, and I won't let my son be treated like a second-ass citizen in his own family. No one spoke. The only sound was the clink of a fork dropping on a plate. I exhaled. So here's the deal. I'm going to assume control of the cabin lease starting next month. You can remove it from your Airbnb listings. I've already spoken with the management company, and I've decided Ben and I will spend a few weeks there this summer, just the two of us. No drama, no performance. Lauren looked like she'd swallowed glass. And going forward, I added, I'll decide when and if we attend family gatherings. If I'm invited, I'll assume it's sincere. If not, I'm okay with that too. I turned to my mom. No hard feelings, but I won't keep showing up to be someone's backdrop. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. Maybe guilt. Maybe something else, but she said nothing. Marissa stood beside me, placing a hand on my back. Ben looked up at me with awe, and then I smiled genuinely for the first time all night. Thanks for dinner. We walked out as dessert was served as the door closed behind us. I could hear the silence still ringing in that perfect little dining room. That was the last family dinner I attended for a long time. But it was the first night I truly felt free. Not just from Lauren, from the need to explain, to prove, to perform. I didn't need their approval anymore because I'd built something better. I'd built me, and I'd shown my son that quiet people don't stay quiet forever.